Listen up, beautiful nerds. Imagine going up the stairs to visit your friend's apartment, and when you reach the top of the stairs, there are two men there waiting for you. One of them, who you met the other day, and you told them to leave you alone, and now he's brought another strange man you have never seen in your life because they believe you're responsible for a typhoid fever outbreak, and they need samples of your blood, urine, and feces. The woman going up the stairs was Mary Mallon. The man who waiting for her up the stairs was George Soper. Some of you may know Mary as Typhoid Mary, and somehow this isn't even the strangest part of her story. Mary Mallon was born in Ireland and immigrated to the United States as a teenager in the early 1900s. She was working as a cook for wealthy families in New York, and she was a good cook. Mary could command high wages and find work in very desirable households. But something strange was happening in the places where Mary worked. People were developing typhoid fever, and eventually one man started to notice the pattern: George Soper. See, in 1906, several members of a wealthy family vacationing in Oyster Bay suddenly developed typhoid fever. So George Soper was brought in to investigate. And eventually, he turned his attention to the family cook, Mary Mallon. Now, Soper began reconstructing her employment history, and he found something very disturbing. Typhoid kept appearing in the households where she was working, and Mary herself never appeared to get sick. Now, today we know that someone infected with Salmonella typhi can sometimes become a chronic carrier, meaning they can carry and shed the bacteria without appearing sick themselves. But in the early 1900s, the idea of a perfectly healthy person spreading typhoid was still relatively new. And Soper became convinced that Mary was exactly that, a healthy carrier. There was just one tiny problem. He needed to test her. And Mary was like, nah. So this is what happened. Soper found Mary at a house where she was working and explained his theory. He told her he believed that she was spreading typhoid and asked for samples of her urine, her blood, and her feces. This is the first time he asked. Mary did not take this well at all. She didn't know this man, to be fair. According to Soper, she grabbed a carving fork and advanced toward him. And he was like, yeah, okay, I'm leaving. Now, honestly, if a random man appeared at my workplace, I would be scared too, talking about I need to test your blood, your urine, and your feces. But Soper was convinced that he was right, so he decided to try again. And nerds, this is where we get to the Effin Staircase. Soper learned that Mary frequently visited a friend who lived in an apartment on 3rd Avenue. According to Soper, the friend agreed to help rearrange another meeting. Now, I think the setup is messed up because Mary didn't know. Anyway, so one night after Mary finished work, Soper arrived with another physician she never met, Dr. Bert Hubler, and I need you to hear how this man described this. He really wrote, "We waited at the head of the stairs." So Mary goes to visit her friend, walks up the stairs, and waiting at the top is George Soper and some random man she has never met in her life, again telling her that they believe she is responsible for an outbreak of typhoid fever and that they need samples of her blood, urine, and feces. Now, my guy, perhaps your second attempt at getting this woman's cooperation should not have been a surprise staircase meeting with another strange man she has never met asking for her body fluids. I'm just saying. Anyway, so after the men explained why they wanted the samples, Mary again refused. She's like, no, who are you? She insisted that she wasn't a carrier, and nothing they said changed her mind. These two are really petty. Soper compared Mary's position to that of a lawyer who was told by the judge that all the facts were against her client and still denied the facts. In other words, you cannot win an argument with this woman. George was tired. tired. Eventually, Soper and Hubler ended the meeting, and Soper concluded that there was no point in trying again. My man was fed up, but he didn't give up his theory. He went straight to the New York City Department of Health and recommended that Mary should be taken to custody so that officials could test her, and the department actually agreed. So, in March 1907, Mary Mallon was forcibly taken to the health department hospital. After Mary's arrest, Soper visited her again. This time, he wanted to ask her for her history. Have you ever had typhoid before? And if you have, when and where? Now, he told Mary that nobody was accusing her of deliberately hurting anyone and that understanding her case could just help other people. And Mary's response, according to Soper, without uttering a word, Mary retreated with dignity to the toilet, leaving me standing alone in the room. With dignity to the toilet. I'm not gonna lie to you, these two are kind of funny sometimes. What is happening? Why did she leave him alone and apparently go to the toilet? This was the last time the Soper attempted to interview her. He was like, yeah, the department needs to handle this themselves. And they did eventually get the samples. And typhoid bacteria was actually found in her stool. They were right. They continued testing her for months. And sometimes she would get a negative result and then a positive again. Mary was an intermittent carrier, which means that she could appear healthy and sometimes even test negative while still carrying and shedding the disease. Soper referred to Mary as virtually a living cultural tube, which is really messed up. Would remain in custody for approximately 3 years. Even Soper himself said that she was virtually a prisoner. She had never convicted a crime and she did fight for her release. Her lawyers argued that they deprived her of her liberty and she wasn't knowingly harming anyone and that they confined her without a hearing and that her detention could become a life sentence. But the courts took the side of the Department of Health. They thought she was a public threat. Mary insisted that she was being held a prisoner despite not being sick. She distrusted the people who held her and she was even scared of them. She said at one point she was so distressed after they detained her that one of her eyelids started twitching and they never gave her proper care. An eye doctor never went to see her, but they eventually gave her medicine. In the meantime, though, they also were proposing to do more serious procedures like gallbladder remover, and she was like, absolutely not. In the meantime, the newspaper did a whole public spectacle of her, and she was being known as Typhoid Mary, which she absolutely hated, and she asked the doctor how he would feel if they were calling him Typhoid William Park. 1910, after approximately 3 years of being detained, she was released. But there were conditions. See, she couldn't be a cook or work in any other type of food, handling food, and she had to report with the health department. And she agreed, and she actually did it for a while, until she didn't. And then she was gone. She disappeared. Where the hell is Mary? I lost track of my girl for 5 years. She was incognito, nerds. She moved around and worked under different names as a cook. Her incognito plan failed in 1915 when a typhoid outbreak happened in the Sloan Hospital for Women. 25 people developed typhoid. And working in the hospital in the kitchen was a Miss Brown. She had been working there for 3 months before the first case. Now, during that outbreak, some of her workers remembered a Typhoid Mary incident, and they jokingly started calling her Typhoid Mary, not knowing she was the real Typhoid Mary. Mary really said, I know Mary, I'm Miss Brown. That's literally why she got caught, because they were jokingly calling her Typhoid Mary, not knowing she was the real Typhoid Mary, and that brought attention to the officials. She ran away again, but they eventually caught her and she would never be released again. There are really two different Mary Mallon stories, because the first time that Soper approached her, Mary felt completely healthy. She didn't believe that she was genuinely spreading typhoid. She hadn't knowingly harmed anyone. Even Soper himself called her an innocent offender. We questioned civil liberties and public health, and how much freedom can the government take from someone who isn't visibly sick? Because we should also question how Mary was treated by the doctors and officials. But some people's views of Mary changed after 1910, because she had been told so many times that the officials believed that she was a carrier. She had been released under the condition that she could not be a cook, and she still did it. So it seemed to me, at least, that they weren't planning on keeping her confined forever, which I think is important. Soper was completely baffled, because even though he criticized her, he did say that he thought she was intelligent and self-reliant and courageous and clever, which I can agree, because I could imagine that hiding from the authorities for 5 years is not an easy task. He couldn't understand why someone so intelligent could take these risks. And historians are left today with the question: how do you protect the public from someone capable of spreading a deadly disease without stripping away their humanity? That's why over a century later, we're still talking about Typhoid Mary. Thank you for watching, my lovely friends. I am Glory from Archives of the Century. Stay safe, stay weird, stay curious. I'll see you in the archives, my historian friends.